You had to be there when Kendrick's verse on Control first hit everyone's ears. It wasn't even his song, but he commanded attention from not just audiences everywhere, but his peers in the game. You see, he's the next Tupac. Not only is he the king of the West Coast, he's the king of New York too. And he's coming for everyone's head and he's chopping them right off. Over 10 years later, and it can't be understated to say that Kendrick Lamar is one of the biggest rappers to ever touch a mic. Even disregarding sales, he's made some of the most timeless music that many have considered him the GOAT for. The one that would save the game from the mumblers, vapidness, and spit that realness missing from the charts. His newest album comes 5 years after the last, satiating a deep hunger his fans have had for new music. But this new album? It's something. Since Damn, you could tell the weight of fame and the expectations of the creative process was taking its toll. Now though, Mr. Morale in The Big Steppers paints a picture of a Kendrick less dejected and more content with himself for the first time in seemingly a while. Him finally being content with himself comes from a lot of things, mostly therapy and self-reflection, but seemingly jumping off the pedestal his career has afforded him was the push he needed to find recovery. Clearly, nobody's healing journey is ever complete, but this new album gives a snapshot of what that might entail, especially the ugly parts. The savior complex, or the hero complex, or the messiah complex, or white knight syndrome is a frame of mind where someone strives to be the hero of everyone else's story. People who have this tend to have characteristics like an exaggerated need to save others and feeling better about themselves after the fact. In some cases, the savior complex can lead a person to create situations that inconvenience or harm others solely so that they can take credit for any type of resolution. Oftentimes, people who develop savior complexes command control of another person's life to escape the anxieties and fear within their own lives. They believe in only their input on an issue, so they find themselves in circumstances where they're either taken advantage of by someone or being a manipulator themselves. The person being quote-unquote helped may end up developing an unhealthy dependence on the savior. Sometimes, the help isn't even really helpful in the long term. Think Christian missionaries in the global south. It's like that meme of Tuxedo Mask saying his job is done even though he didn't really do much. Mortal Man is where he places himself among civil rights icons like Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X. He even stuck in some Moses in there. His faith has always been a huge factor in his music output. He even dropped Damn on Good Friday, literally representing the day of Christ's death on the cross. Since making it big, Kendrick has felt an inherent responsibility to put on for the next generation. It's been a lot of hometown heroes from Compton, but nobody's ever questioned if they were up to the task as vocally as he has. The anxiety of dying too young constantly haunted him, as if he was placing his own life on a clock. So, excessive personal sacrifice for a perceived greater good, strenuous attempts to change people, main character syndrome, content with more Jesus allegories than an episode of Evangelion. Check. I mean, he's wearing a crown of thorns on the album cover, for God's sake. Pun intended. He knows better than anyone where he comes from and the effort it's taken to get here. Davey Keem reflects that energy on the opening lines of the Savior interlude. Keem reflects on the days where the next meal wasn't guaranteed and when violence was seen in and out the home. And now it's Jesus pieces at luau's. Please stop going to Hawaii. Thus, we now get to Savior. Kicking off the song, we have a really deadpan Kendrick, mentioning himself among other black notables. Mortal Man in this context almost is the exact opposite in concept. Now, when comparing himself to others, he's mentioning people that are a part of his class rather than legends that are both too unrealistic to match up to and also too dead. Despite all the talent exhibited by people like LeBron and Future, folk like them are not your saviors. Kendrick has been relatively silent over the last couple of years, so this is also the first time we're hearing his thoughts on what's been going on as of late. I don't care for no public speaking, and they like to wonder where I've been, protecting my soul in the valley of silence. I imagine it's been a few turbulent years for Kendrick as much as it has for the rest of us. The fact that he had writer's block for 2 years emphasizes his point that he felt that he had nothing productive to add to the conversations being had leading up to the 2020 uprisings and beyond. Focusing on self remained a priority, rather than wanting any more attention from a politically charged song. Maybe it was a form of doomerism. It's a natural and valid response to all the calamity around you, and he's someone that's not even on social media as much as you or I, and staying silent was his way of combating the pessimism and negativity that's followed him his entire life. It's also a response to the role he's been placed in. He's rapped before about his annoyance with how people perceive his actions and whether or not he really truly lives up to what he raps about. He's taken a back seat while watching people put black squares on their IGs or only play black music on streaming platforms. So of course, it comes across as contradictory, which leads us into the chorus. Simply put, are we, the audience, treating Kendrick the same way when he's here and when he's not? Are we happy to see him on his journey of self-actualization and self-discovery? Or are we just here for the music? And will we leave at a moment's notice? The next verse goes a little deeper in the contradictions he's been seeing, with how fellow artists of his generation aren't willing to speak on real issues as he does. I think compared to other rappers, Kendrick definitely does get the intellectual, lyrical miracle that you had to dissect label way more. Not like he hasn't leaned into it, but seeing how people expect things out of him compared to others is clearly still bothering him. They get to be politically correct and not have to mention much at all, but he has to let the whole world know what he thinks. So this album feels like a pushback against that, but also a rebuttal at the same time. And so he concludes the song with, yeah, I am not your savior. He struggles with vices like the rest of us, and he sees the world as a lot more gray, with it becoming harder to distinguish who's really on our side. He sees his silence as a virtue among the loud voices of pretenders and fakers vying to get our attention with half-baked performances. And he's been healthier for it. Whew, a lot going on there. Honestly, throughout the whole album. And I don't know, after sitting with it for some time, I have some thoughts. Consider it a rebuttal to the rebuttal. Now, I can't speak for anybody but myself truly, so let me express that. Personally, I was definitely waiting on this album. I don't really like pestering artists to release new work simply because, they're people too. They procrastinate, they lose focus, they can take their time on work like the rest of us do. I don't want to come across as critiquing his journey, just the music that was inspired from it. I just feel like a lot of what Kendrick is saying here in regard to his savior complex isn't much really. For one, it's quite obviously still working on a lot of it, and rejecting the title with that much meaning in his words is definitely going to be conducive to his overall growth. But underneath that is a tinge of narcissism that I just can't help but pick up on. He's standing on the shit that he's saying, yes, of course, almost in rebellion, but to who? Worldwide Steppers, for instance, has him sounding reactionary as hell, talking about how freedom of speech is dead and that if your real opinions are shared, that it's over for you. All this commentary on society just reads as holier than thou, and that's a perspective he's supposed to be trying to get rid of on this album. He sounds just like Dave Chappelle on that point, complaining about the lack of ability to say whatever you want, however you say it, while simultaneously being millionaires from being able to say whatever they want and not facing any consequence from it. I don't think I need to bring up Auntie Diaries and how his inclusion of the F slur was controversial. But I mean, he said it numerous times. And yeah, people were rightfully upset about it. Is he gonna face any consequences for it? As far as we know, probably not. Kendrick is at a point in his career, his life, where he's more successful and wealthy than a lot of us ever will be. To the point where he feels like he relates more to Kodak Black than society's definition of what being pro-black is. Which is... completely get the angle of using somebody who's probably the poster child for being a product of their environment to further the message of black men needing to heal and be forgiven from their transgressions. Kodak is also probably the worst example to use for that. His sexual assault charge withstanding, his inclusion on the record just dampens the overall message, especially when put next to songs like Mother I Sober. His verses don't even really do much with the themes on the record either. Like, you're opening up about the black community's relationship with generational trauma and abuse, and you brought an actual abuser on to make that point. Instead of like an actual survivor. For that matter, maybe an actual trans person or trans rapper would have probably had Auntie Diaries go down a lot easier as a listen. There's the argument saying that the song isn't for people in the queer community or its allies. I'm not queer, but I don't know, it's gotta be weird seeing a conversation being held about you and around you, but not actually include you. There's definitely something else poignant about likening himself to Kodak though, and that's how they're both in the same economic class. No matter what's going on the outside, pandemic and brutality be damned, they're more likely to be okay than the rest of us. Of course, Kendrick and other rappers have lived their lives as black people and well until they die, but you're not poor anymore. You're not waiting on welfare checks anymore. It's Jesus Pieces in Hawaii now, remember? Kendrick has been struggling with what it means to be a voice for the people, but truthfully, he could never really be that voice. He's a rapper making millions, similar to the same capitalist that he's critiquing on this song. Yeah, he's not on IG with money phones, but have you seen this nigga's net worth? It's like those people who gas up Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg for dressing modestly, aka having no type of drip, and it turns out the t-shirt that they got on is worth a semester at a private college.
Or a little meat smoking.
At this point, he's way more isolated from what we're facing every day than he was when Even Good Kid dropped. He may have some type of hesitancy on the vaccine and want to take more of a pseudoscientific approach, but rich niggas are way less likely to die from COVID, just off the fact that he can go to an actual hospital and not immediately go broke for paying for treatment. Malcolm X had some words on this topic that are just as relevant today as they were before. He challenges the idea that black celebrity class could really ever do much for the community's liberation, primarily due to them being a separate class from those they claim to represent.
And this included comedians, comics, trumpet players, baseball players. Show me in the white community where a comedian is a white leader. Show me in the white community where a singer is a white leader, or a dancer or a trumpet player is a white leader. These aren't leaders. These are puppets and clowns that have been set up over the white community and over the black community by the white community and have been made celebrities and usually say exactly what they know that the white man wants to hear.
When considering leaders for the masses, their race and their class matter. What it takes to be a voice for the people requires a lot of sacrifice, which includes people wanting to know what you think and following you on that. And people only judge Kendrick by that metric due to him literally being branded that way. Of course, niggas are gonna look to you or J. Cole for your work to reflect that. Kendrick can get on his soapbox and say that everyone's too sensitive, but it just speaks to the fact that he's not really listening to the same people that he's trying to save. He can't save everyone. Not by himself anyway. Even Sailor Moon had his Sailor Guardians. Maybe instead of calling out rappers for being vapid and flexing, he could form a coalition with them to better the community. I also feel like, although his silence could be a form of catharsis in the face of speaking up about injustices, it doesn't mean that his voice doesn't matter. If anything, utilizing his voice for those without his reach and resources could serve as a much more productive way to utilize his platform. There have been many anecdotes of missionaries not really helping the communities they build houses and churches in. The main idea surrounding the criticism is that these communities in foreign countries aren't made better from a few houses or churches being built. The goal should be to help these other people become self-sufficient, not to colonize. Millions of dollars every year go into sending missionaries when that could just be better served directly in the hands of the people. You're treating a symptom of the problem at best and maintaining the issue at worst, and then posting it on Instagram for a photo op. I hope his journey of wellness goes well, and I'm honestly glad that he's letting go of all this pressure built up against him. It's still a lot of work to be done, and we clearly can't expect celebrities or artists to do that for us. Focusing on self after never doing so can be so liberating, but it shouldn't be at the cost of contributing to harmful rhetoric on your huge platform. Self-care doesn't mean not giving a fuck about the weight of your words and how your actions impact others, especially those less privileged. It's not healthy to shoulder the burdens of others without considering your own burdens as well. We can't see or create change without coming together to do so. I don't think anyone asked Kendrick to be perfect, just someone who's always willing to learn, heal, grow, while reflecting that in his artistry. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like. If you want to like some more, go ahead and subscribe so you can keep up with any next videos that I post. Other than that, I appreciate you for watching all the way to the end. I got social media in the bio if you want to follow me. But that's it. Spread peace, be easy, drink y'all water. I'll catch up with y'all later.